we still have people waiting at the door, yes or no? I think it's okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. It's our second PRODURABLE day, the end of the afternoon, so thank you for the courageous ones who are still willing to learn and to share about committed brand. This is the fourth conference that PRODURABLE has organized on the issue. Just a short introduction. I'm Olivier Classiot. I am one of the co-founders of ENJEUX et DesHOMMES. Our company works with both corporate and brands to turn sustainability into reality. And of course, the question of brands engagement is an issue that we are facing very often. In this conference number 4, we are going to focus on a specific challenge, which is how we can build, or I should say, how we can rebuild trust. Just a few observations before we discover and before I introduce our speakers. 10 years ago, CSR and sustainability was not an issue that involved brands. Only the, let's say, sustainability native brands were speaking and were exposed in terms of CSR. For example, I remember working with the Bell cheese company. In 2010, we started designing their CSR corporate approach, and only in 2016, the brands of the company started to ask us how they should choose the issues, how they should expose their commitments, how they should find the ways to make their consumers, but also stakeholders, know about their commitments. In the meantime, marketing people got interested in CSR and in brands engagement. But we have also faced in the meantime difficulties. One of them is that we've seen the appearance of what we call the jungle of labels. So many labels, and sometimes the difficulty for the consumer to make a difference and to really use them to make a choice. We've also seen remaining greenwashing mistakes from these communication and marketing departments, and reputational scandals that were actually challenging not only the communication but the effective commitments and actions of the companies. What are the consequences of this evolution? We have to admit at the beginning of 2020 that companies and brands are not the ones we trust. Consumers now understand the issues and they now express expectations and insights. If you see the study from ADEME, it is a recent study from 2019, you see that that figure is very important, but you also see that it is a common trend, whatever the continent where we stand, whatever the age group, whatever the gender, and whatever the income. And so, this has led not only on to reputational impacts, but also on sales, on the effective business of the companies. So, marketing people, salespeople, business leaders have taken the issue of trust and transparency seriously. Why? Because transparency is one of the most expected benefit from the brand commitments. And so companies and brands are not the trusted ones, and we trust rather NGOs, applications, labels, medias, what we call now these trusted third parties, okay? So this is more or less the beginning of our reflection this afternoon. For this workshop, we try to identify 4 questions. Why is there a lack of trust? Can we put words on that outcome? what are these new expectations we are talking about? And is there a smart and efficient way to be transparent? Because one of the questions we would like to address today is transparency self-sufficient, or do we need transparency, but also something else to make this confidence tangible? I would like to thank the 4 speakers that agreed to join us this afternoon. 2 of them represent companies and brands which are very committed in terms of sustainability. Anne Peignet, you are a marketing director of Green Family. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. You joined the company 4 years ago after a first experience for Continental Food Group. Mr. Glass, who prepared the conference with us and was supposed to be here this afternoon, but based on COVID, policies couldn't join us. So I would like really, Timothy, to thank you for being with us through video conferencing. Hello. So Timothy, the company that you represent and the brands you represent today is Werner & Merz is a 5-generation family business that was created more than 150 years ago. And you joined this company in 2014 after working for a group like Nestlé. Now you run the corporate affairs department of this international company. Thank you for being with us again. Rim Trabelsi, you are an entrepreneur. And after working for CSR department of companies like Carrefour, and also acting as a CSR consultant, especially in the fashion sector, you decided not to create a company, but of course it's a company, but it's also a solution. It's an app called Clear Fashion, whose objective is to help consumers make sustainable choice in the field of textile, let's say, or fashion. So we will discover your solution in a few minutes. And Solène Garcin-Charcozet. After 10 years in marketing department of major cosmetic groups, you choose to join TENNAXIA. TENNAXIA is both a consulting and a solution provider for companies in the field of CSR strategy, supplier assessment, and also waste management. So we have 4 speakers, 2 representing companies and brands, and 2 representing third parties, and we will try to use their different perspective to try to address the issues we shared earlier. So I will start immediately with our 2 brand leaders, Anne and Timothy. Anne, maybe I will suggest that you start. We identify in the preparation of this conference 3 questions. Why this lack of trust? So in your specific area, of course. How does your brand, so you have 2 brands at Green Family. We decided to focus on love and green, but how your brand answer this challenge. And it's an interesting question we will share at the end. How would you define an efficient transparency?
Yes. So why there is a lack of trust in our market? So first of all, we sell nappies, so baby nappies, and also feminine hygiene products. So the lack of trust on our market is mainly due to the incredible level of polemics and scandals that you can have these few past years concerning the ingredients of the nappies and of the feminine hygienic product, because we don't know what's in them. So at the beginning, it was a good thing. It was a warning for the parents. So let's say, what do you put on your baby skin? So it was interesting because a classical nappy is 85% of plastic. So it's interesting to know what's really in it, and that plastic may have some bad components also in it. So it was good at the beginning. It was a warning, but now it's each year you have a new study. Each year you have a new magazine with a different conclusion, saying this brand is bad, this brand is bad. It's moving all the time, and they are looking for the smallest component in the nappy, and they are making a big deal on it in order to make parents fear for the health of their baby and to sell more magazines. So parents are lost. Too many studies, too many magazines, too many different conclusions, and this the result of all this is a lack of trust on the brand and also on the studies for the parent, and they are lost. They don't know what they have to buy. They don't know what's in the product. It's very difficult because each year there is a new one, and it's a big issue for us for the lack of trust. Yes.
So at the Green family, and especially with the Love and Green brand, you decided that you wanted to be part of the solution. So now, concretely, how does it work? What does it bring in terms of transparency and trust that the other one don't?
Transparency is really in our DNA from the beginning, and for example, for nappies, we were astonished that you cannot know what is in the product. You cannot know what is in contact with your baby skin during 3 years, and we did not understand why. So we were the first brand to have the complete and comprehensive list of ingredients on our packaging. It was 2 years ago. Now it is mandatory, but only since July. So we were pioneer in transparency for the baby, for the baby nappies, but also for feminine hygiene product. Because I don't know if you know, but for the feminine hygiene product, you don't have to put your list of ingredients on the packaging. It's not mandatory. So you wear a product 5 days by month during 30, 40 years, but you don't know what it is. And we were like, no, it's not possible. So when we launched our brand for feminine hygiene product, we launched it with the complete list of ingredients on it. Yeah. Now some of brands have also done the same, but not all of them, not the big ones, and still it's not very it's not complete. You have some components, but not all the complete list. So for us, transparency, it's also to say, okay, our products are more natural, but still we have some plastic component in it because we don't have an alternative yet. Mm-hmm. But we have to say it. We cannot say, okay, we are more natural and it's perfect. Okay. No, we still have some plastic in our product, but we have to say it. And the other point is concerning our cosmetic products, because we sell cosmetic products for babies and also for women. The list of ingredients is mandatory for these products, but it's we call it listing key. It's in Latin, so not very clear if you are not a Latin speaker. Like that, but
I'm not, for example.
So we decided to translate it with a clear explanation on the packaging. So it's with the application, the app, La Vérité sur les cosmétiques, and they translate the component and the ingredients. They say, is it good or is it bad? Mm. And for us, it's very important that the consumer knows what the component, what the ingredient is, and is it good for him or not.
So I already hear not a selective transparency, but also pedagogy. I need to explain. My consumer is not as expert as I am, as you can see on the screen. Okay. We also discussed that transparency is not only on the products.
Yes. Transparency, I think, needs to be global on all the aspects of the brand, and it's very important for us in order to reassure the parents and the women and to fight this lack of confidence. It's very important for us to publish our toxicity tests because we make a lot of toxicity tests on our products because it's for the babies, so it's we have to sell a very safe product. So we make toxicity tests every 3 months, and we publish them on our website. So it's not very clear for all the people because it's very technical, but we need to publish them to show people that we don't have anything to hide, and we show our test. And we also we also tell everything to our customer because as you can see on the map, it's the map of our plants. And it's important for us to say, okay, we have 2 plants in France for baby wipes and for cosmetic products, but our plants for a feminine hygiene product is in Italy because there is no plant for this product in France. And for nappies, it's we have 2 plants in Spain and in Czech Republic. And it was important for us to tell it and to explain why we don't have a plant in France and why we are very proud of this plant because this is how we can propose more natural products. So transparency needs to be on every aspect of the brand.
Yeah. So the product, but also the company behind the product, and also the toxicity tests are very interesting because we discussed that there's a consumer, but there are also other stakeholders, and if you don't match the expectation of the other stakeholders, they can impact negatively the information and the relationship with the brand. Okay, so now Han, what would you like as a representative of your team at Love and Green tell us about what we would call an efficient transparency? If the objective is to build or to rebuild trust or to keep the trust of these stakeholders, including the consumers, what would you be your solution or your recipe?
Our recipe is that there is no transparency without consistency. You have to be consistent, as we said, on every aspect of the brand, the plan, the test, on everything. And to gain consumer trust, transparency has to be proved. So as we said, with external tests, with KPIs, with labels and certification to reinsure consumer. The transparency has to be total. Not only it's easy to focus on brand strengths, but we also have to say for many people now, as we said, it's very important to be produced in France. So as we are not for the nappies, we have to explain why, and it's important not hide, okay, to say, okay, we won't say, maybe they won't mind. We have to tell it, and we have to show it and to explain it. And transparency has also to be consistent. So each change has to be explained. If we have an innovation on our product, we have to explain it, and we have to explain why the nappy will be not the same. And if we change our plant, we have to explain why. In fact, we have to be very pedagogic with our customers and stakeholders.
Okay, thank you very much. I will get back to you in the second part for the questions. I would like to give the mic to our friend on the screen. So, Mr. Gals, you also, based on your group, but also the brands you represent. Of course, everybody knows, I think, in France, the Renette brand. But you also have some other brands, and I know they have consumers, but also B2B professional clients. And you wanted to share both some consumer insight, but also some of the commitments that your brand had taken.
Yes, thank you, Olivier. And I'm really sad not being able to be in your beautiful city of Paris. So sad not to be there, and hope to be back soon. And yes, thank you again for making it possible for me to present. I wanted to start with a slide that basically shows some consumer insights, and as a brand you always should know what your consumers are interested in, and that was a study conveyed last year, and it had the result that in Germany 75% of the consumers think that the most important environmental issue is plastic waste, and number 2 is climate change. And if you, in the next slide, shows the situation in Europe, which basically replicates the result. Of course, there's some differences, and it's I'm sorry that France is not on the slide, but I'm aware that also in France there's a strong environmental movement going on, and if I understood correctly, then the last election in the municipalities gave also some strong results to the Green Party. So I could assume that also in France, plastic waste and climate change are high on the agenda. So again, this is something that is very important for a brand to look into, especially if a brand that is placed in an environmental messaging. Maybe you could ask that if 2020 we would make a survey, would everything change because of COVID? The reason I'm not in Paris. I don't have a slide to that. Actually, I have a slide, but I didn't manage to bring it to the slide deck that I sent. It's a survey that was just recently done in Germany, and surprise, surprise, climate change is still #1 and plastic waste is #2. So basically, it's not changing. It will remain an extremely important issue for consumers, because COVID will be away one day, hopefully, and the climate change won't. And plastic waste also, we know of the hundreds of years that we have plastic waste in the environment. So maybe we could go on to the next slide.
Just maybe you move on, Timothy. I just wanted to say that that's true in your sector, it's true in every sector. The COVID crisis had just confirmed trends that were already existing before, and it didn't contradict the importance of sustainability. So I would say the opposite. It put the pressure on the efficiency of the transformation we need to achieve.
Absolutely, 100% agree with that statement, Olivier. And it basically also gives us the wind from the back we always like to have for going ahead with what we are committed to. And that, of course, is our brand. And our brand, Frosch, was founded, the company, as you mentioned, 1867, and Frosch was introduced in 1986 and Renette in 1990. So you can see already, if you take Renette in France since 1990, it's 30 years, but it took some time to really become the brand, the green brand in the market. And why is that so? Well, basically it is so because we are in a mass market. We're not in a niche. We're not this deep green brand that you find in the environmental green stores and a small shelf. We compete with the global brands, and obviously that's not so easy to place your brand value towards the consumer. It takes time, and that's where we again get to the consumer, and the consumer needs to have trust in what you try to convey to him or to her, and so from the beginning, Frosch was a promise for sustainability, but obviously you need to prove it. You just can't claim that you're sustainable. You need to prove it. And so we said that we can only prove it if we're holistically sustainable. And holistically sustainable means, and I think that the speaker before me, she already pointed out, you have to be really transparent and overall what the production, concerning the water use, the energy, the material health. And that is basically what Cradle to Cradle reflects. So first, we're EMAS certified, actually. EMAS is a management system that you can go through a certification for your production site. You're not allowed to put it on your product, but it's the first step to really become aware of all your sustainable challenges you have in your company. And then we discovered Cradle to Cradle, and Cradle to Cradle, again, is something that is very holistically, because as I mentioned, and please skip to the next slide, I mentioned that it's a I think intellectually also challenging concept, because it separates sustainability in biological cycle and technical cycle, but it's very clever, I find, because just taking our products, the content is the biological cycle and the packaging is the technical cycle, and you definitely have to find holistically sustainable solutions for both cycles. So if once you differentiate and you make it a little bit more transparent and understandable, that you just don't have like a green product, because if you look into a green product and you understand fast, Is it really green? Is the packaging green? I mean, I'm using green as a synonym for yeah, sustainable. Or do you have
Timothy,
to
just let me
differentiate between both? I often go to the product.
Okay, the two last sentences were in Latin.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's all right. It's a technical communication issue. We understood that if you get, if you clarify the issues between, for example, this technical and biological cycle, and if you are able to explain the solution you implement, then you can make the consumer and the stakeholders aware of what you are doing, and it supports the confidence in the brands. Did I rephrase what you said more or less?
Absolutely, and that actually creates trust. If you bring it back to the core issue for consumer relationship of a brand, that creates trust, and that is that's the highest value for a brand. And taking that into account towards the consumer, cradle to cradle is very difficult to explain. And if you know that the consumer decision is taken at a shelf within 2 to 3 seconds, then every label that distracts the consumer from his buying situation could cause that he will not take your brand. So if you have a label that needs to be explained, then that turns out to be difficult. So maybe if I can just elaborate very shortly on how we communicate in a kind of onion concept. And the outer layer is the consumer, and the core is the expert. And obviously towards the consumer, you have to remain rather superficial. So you can put cradle to cradle on your product. If he doesn't understand it, then that could create a problem, but he can go on our website and we explain everything in depth. So he can have the information. But again, we're in the mass market, and I would assume that maybe 70, 80% our buyers will not go on our website. They just trust our brand, that having done the right thing. So that's where it comes a little bit complex about, is the label helpful, or what is the more important challenge? And for me, I think the most important challenge is to develop a brand that is perceived as sustainable by the consumer, and that really he trusts the brand. And maybe if I get to the next, and that would be the last slide, and then I would be happy to take any questions from you, Olivier. And to make things visible, we created an initiative for using recycled content in packaging. And that was pretty new in 2012, and especially since we took the mixed collection as a source. So also you in France have a packaging collection, and we in Germany have packaging collection, and the packaging in Germany is collected in a mixed way. So plastics and metal and then Tetra packs, they all are together. So they're pretty dirty, if you may excuse this expression. And taking out, and we have about 2 million tons of plastic packaging in this mixed collection. So taking out the material and using and reusing it in high quality applications, that's something that the consumer also understands, because he's collecting and sorting at home, and he would like to see a concrete result. And so when he sees that the packaging that he sorted and collected at home comes back into the shelf, that's a very strong signal. And the same thing with our stand-up pouch. We were the first ones to develop a fully recyclable and high-quality recyclable packaging made out of a mono material, where you can actually take off that printed outer part, and it has a transparent inner pouch that is perfectly recyclable. You could easily make a new pouch out of it again. So again, it was something that we felt it would make a lot of sense for the consumer to see that it is reasonable, and it adds something to the environmental, and reducing the environmental burden if he separates the material at home.
Okay, so here again, I hear about pedagogy. I can have a technical information, but I need to adapt to the level of understanding that the consumer can have, even if I can set as an objective to raise the level of information and awareness of my consumers, especially if I'm a leader brand like yours. And also, I hear about actions that will also match the expectations of the consumers. Of course, sustainability for a company like Hermès is a huge list of issues to cover. But if we come back to the consumer insight that Timothy mentioned at the beginning of his presentation, we see that some of the initiatives are matching the insights of the consumer. So the brand engagement and the larger CSR commitment of the company are two things that are different, but they need to work together. All right, thank you, Timothy. If you allow me, I would like also to give the mic to our two other speakers before I come back to you all with questions. Thank you so much. So we have the chance to have two third parties today. And with the support of Solène and Rim, we would like to also take advantage of their different perspective and approach of the issue. So, Solène, based on your experience, you work with many companies in different sectors, so you have a very large experience, and TENNAXIA has been working on CSR for many years. So, for example, I should say, and we discussed that with the PRODURABLE team when we choose the speakers for the brands. These two brands, in some way, are good examples. But we have to say that many of the other brands are not maybe so advanced. Okay, so why do we still today need to use third parties to create or to recreate trust? And we also, to be concrete, try to get your perspective on an application. Of course, Rim will illustrate with a precise example, but what an application or a label or a certification can bring to a brand that the brand itself cannot get. Okay? Yes. Can you please elaborate?
Thank you, Olivier. Yes, so TENNAXIA, we work with company for years on CSR. We work with the corporate team and, of course, marketing team are included in the work we do. And it's true that it's always something that we discussed with the company we work with when they start developing CSR strategy, because for the company who are new and as the company of Anne, who decided to, from the beginning, work on sustainability and with a sustainable product, the trust of the consumer is there. When you're a company that exists for years, that is not well known for its sustainable practices, it's more difficult to get the trust of the consumer. So there is a work to do with the company to build this trust. And in this case, it's true that labels are very useful, very helpful for the company, because it's not them saying, okay, yes, I've changed the way I'm working now, just believe me. It's not working. So, but when you start saying, okay, you need to work with maybe third party, and that will help you explain what you're doing now, because they will come and give a certificate on the practice that you've been implementing. Then you can start talking again with the consumer and start get the trust from the consumer. So it really helps to get the expertise. I would say that the third party also help the consumer to understand what is said, what are the good criteria to take into account, because it's always difficult for a consumer to understand all the criteria that can be addressed. So this is for us the main interest in working with third party. It's really to rebuild the trust of the consumer.
Yeah. So as we see on the screen, these trusted third party must have some of the qualities we see on the screen, and that's most of the time why they have the recognition of the consumer. And so when we discuss with you, we also mentioned that it's a choice for the brand to choose the third party they will select. We discussed about the label. I mentioned earlier the jungle of label, sometimes private label, self-invented label with criteria that are hard to understand. And I think I remember you told me, in that jungle there are two families, not the good and the bad, but it's something a little bit like this. And so if we want to identify a criteria for a label that would be a trusted third party, what would be
Yes, it asks a little work for the consumer because, of course, there's a lot of different labels. Some are self-declaration, some are made by brands, and some are made by external third parties that have no interest into the brands. So this is the work that the consumer needs to do. It's to go behind the label, behind the certification, to try to understand where it comes from. And it's also sometimes helped by some media that do the work to better understand the label and the criteria.
And it's a journey because the marketing people in the past were not so used to trust and have people challenging their decision, challenging their KPI, challenging their action. So it's also we had a stakeholder dialogue conference this morning. Yeah, we are really there if we talk about the brand engagement. But also, Solène, when we prepared this conference, you told us that transparency is not sufficient.
Yes, well, product is one thing, but as also Anne said, it's not only about product, because we've seen lately that a lot of boycott of products is not because the products are not good, but maybe because the practices of the company is not always very ethics. So we've seen some scandal in the press. We've seen some disaster happening, as you can see. And behind it's not the product that is really in cause. It's more the practices of the company. So what is important for a company is to build really a whole strategy, integrating the product, but also having some fair practices in procurement, in the way it treats its employees. So it's the CSR strategy behind is really, really important to build the trust also of the company and to have the trust of the consumer. Because if you only try to have a logo or a certification on your product, but behind you have very bad practices, one day NGO will come and see it and make it happen on the media. So it's not only product.
Yeah, so it's a difficult game because you need to select the information that the consumer will understand that match their insight, but also you have the whole CSR issues that you need to address. And if you don't have that consistency we were talking about, from the brands to the company, or I should say from the company to the brands, then you can be threatened in the reputation and also in the business you get from this communication. All right, thank you so much. So now, Rim, I would like to give you the mic because, as we said, you created a tool. The apps business is a successful business. Everybody knows about, of course, the nutritional information application that I will not mention. But Clear Fashion is in a different field. It's in textile and fashion. Rim, in a few slides, can you explain us how it works, but also what, from your point of view, it brings to the consumer, but also to the brands that trust you as a third party?
Yes. Thank you so much for the invitation. So I'm Rim. I'm the co-founder of Clear Fashion. So Clear Fashion has been created only 1 year ago, so it's a very young company, young application also. First of all, you have to know that we are not a brand. We are a tool to give information to customer. Our mission is to bring more transparency to the fashion industry because the fashion industry is an industry where there is no information at all regarding who is creating and creating our clothes, where and how. And this is something that interests people now. I guess that it maybe interests you also to know maybe that your clothes has been made in good ways. So how does we created Clear Fashion? We were consumer. The first thing, we were consumer, but also engineer in agronomy. So not in the field of fashion, not in digital, not in entrepreneurship. We were just knowing about the impact of the production sectors, food sector, also cosmetic sectors, and we were just thinking, why don't we have any information in clothing as a consumer? Because when you were talking about the lack of information, it's quite easy to see it in clothes. When you go into a shop, the only information you have is the made in, but everyone knows that it has no sense because the fields of the supply chain are very long and very international. This is mandatory to put the components, but who knows what is really the lyocell or the viscose or any other component in the fashion industry and what it is the impact. And we don't have any information regarding what we really want to say, I guess, how are working people in this field where there is a lot of problems. So what we decide to do is build a community of consumer, and then we ask them what were the criteria they wanted to have while choosing their clothes. Thanks to this, we grouped some criteria toward the 4 thematics, which are environments, condition of workers, so it's called human on the app, health and animal. Then what we've done is quite easy actually, is we went to search about the methodology of evaluation that has been created by the research. And for example, l'ADEME has created since now 10 years ago a way to evaluate the environmental impact of clothes. But it is not used at all. So we just took it and we asked them, and it was open data, so we took it. And then we did the same research with the other criteria. Some criteria were not, there are many, so few research, so we build our own methodology. And so what we've done is creating also a committee of experts to give us more information regarding the state of art in research.
And that leads to the expertise we mentioned. Does the third party bring something in terms of expertise that can challenge? Can I consider them as a partner to address some of the issues that I need to face here, yes, as a brand or as a company? Yes. All right. And so.
Yes, and so we build this methodology of evaluation, and then when you have the methodology of evaluation, you need information to give it to the consumer. So what have we done? We were a very focused consumer, so we asked consumer what were the brands that they want to know, that they want to be evaluated. And so for the most demanded brand, we started to investigate and search for some information regarding their way to design, to produce, where, which components. And then what we do, because we are fair play, when we find this information, we send it to the brand. So let's say, I would take an example, because the most researched brand are H&M, Zara, Adidas. So what we do is we found practices, then we send it to them. We have this information regarding your brand. In 30 days, we are gonna put it on the app. So if you want, you can add more information, correct, or put some more information regarding some things we didn't found. So one brand on 2 is participating. So that means that this is very encouraging, because they are part of the movement, and they are able to be transparent, which was not so easy to.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, because it's a mindset in terms of stakeholder posture either you are in opposition, so you don't, your information is competing with the information from the brand, or you are focused on the objective, which is creating a better world, and then you partner with a company. But now, Rim, how do you protect this app from the greenwashing of marketing people of the brand you are talking about?
Okay, so there is two ways. Well, there is a lot, but first of all, you have to know that Clear Fashion is independent. So we had investor, but no in brands, no in retail, and no in fashion. We have a methodology of evaluation that is the same for each brand. So we are evaluating always brands in the same manner, which is very important. Our methodology is validated with our expert committee, and it is independent. There is no brand in it. Also, when brands are giving us information, they have to justify systematically each declaration they put, and there is many ways to justify and to prove. And some labels are one manner, for example.
So it's interesting because you need to be able to challenge the information from the company, but you are willing to partner with the company, which I found very innovative also, and it's really in the trend that we discussed this morning regarding stakeholder dialogue. Okay, so just a few questions. I just have 4, and we have time. We negotiated 15 minutes additional because we are the last conference tonight. So for the question of the crowd here, maybe one question to Anne. We discussed about the certifications also, and I remember when we prepared this conference with your team, you said, we put our finger on an issue. We, as a committed brand, we bring some answers, but the competitors capture the keywords, talk about the issues, and they have such a power of communication that they can, create how do I say, a gray environment where the consumer cannot really find out what's real and what's not, right? And so we discussed with the team the fact that from your point of view, labels could be interesting as a trusted third party. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes. Labels and certification are for us very, very important because, as you said, now there is a lot of brands that call them green brand, ecological brand. So they are using the words transparency, green, all the words that talks to consumer. Some of them are really committed, but some of them less. You can see on the product, but when you're a consumer, you cannot detect if the product is really an ecological product or not. So for us, labels and certification are a proof. We only choose certification that are the most exigent and that can prove consumer what we say on the product. So it's very important for us to have a label or a certification for each of our product because it brings us a real difference from brands that say that they are ecological, but the product is not really. Okay. So it's very important for us.
Thank you so much. Mr. Gals, we also discussed that issue, and when we prepared, you told me that, well, if a company is really engaged, you don't necessarily need to add some information because it can also be confusing. And you said that what is important is the confidence they have in the brand. But also, you mentioned the fact that Cradle to Cradle was a certification that, as a company, you had chosen. So, what is the perspective of your company and the brands you represent regarding these, the use and the collaboration with these third parties?
Well, Cradle to Cradle, like I mentioned, is complex to explain. The consumer, the end consumer, doesn't really know the label, and to educate, it's very difficult. So basically, we said Cradle to Cradle would be a very good and important tool in the public procurement. So when a municipality, a hospital, a hotel, whatever, buys ecological products, then Cradle to Cradle can be very helpful because the professional buyer has the time to really find out what is behind this labeling. And so maybe I would like to get one step back and say the consumer, he wants that we deliver solutions. The end consumer, he doesn't really want to make a lot of information necessary to understand it. He wants to trust, and we need to deliver solutions. And solutions means that he can trust that we are really not only have whatever limited edition, we don't just produce for a specific market, we do that 100%. So we have 100% of our packaging made from recycled material, and Cradle to Cradle means that we are holistically sustainable, and if the consumer is really interested, then he can find that out. But at the end, he just wants to trust us, and he wants that we deliver solutions, and that's what our job is.
Okay, so the trusted third party can bring let's say credibility, but if we want to use it for the end consumer, it also needs to bring legibility. It has to be understandable and not bring complexity. Okay, my last question will be to our friend from TENNAXIA. At TENNAXIA you work on CSR strategies we mentioned, but also on reporting. And we discussed about the fact that some of the brands we are talking about have corporate communication reports on CSR, sometimes very heavy, and I wanted then to ask you, can we imagine that at some point, maybe in a few months or years from now, we could create a CSR report that a consumer would be able to read and understand? Is it something that is completely theoretical, or are we moving in that direction?
It's true that for the moment, many brands are working on their CSR report due to regulation. For example, a lot have what we call a déclaration de performance extra-financière, but it's mainly for investors. It's for specific stakeholders that are interested in it. So it's usually some heavy document, as you're saying, not really understandable by anyone. And when you have a report of 40 pages with almost no image, if you want to find an information, it's a little bit hard. So it's true that today it's complicated, but I would say it's something that brands need to go through because they need to start by, as we said, building a CSR strategy, taking into account the stakeholders' expectation, whoever the stakeholders are, of course consumer, but also their customers, their suppliers. And it's an ongoing process, and we know that today it's really a question from the company to what is the next step for the CSR report, because they understand that this heavy document in the end don't reach the public. They usually don't even know who is reading it, and it's maybe investor, and they are not even sure. And when they want to talk with the consumer, it's true that maybe there is some space, some room for some document, maybe more understandable by a consumer, maybe focused on some thematics, specific thematics, and not on all the information that the company can provide. But it's true that there is a need in this document anyway to be very reliable, really trustworthy, and not to just write nice things, but to disclose really a strong data. And we're working with some customer to identify who they should address their report to, how they should discuss with them. Is it a CSR report? Is it a communication on the website? What are the media? Because it's not only what to write, but also what are the media to use.
Exactly. And so we discussed yesterday in a conference about the touch points. So you have the product, but maybe you have a little information on the product that you can go on the website, you can research, and there are different levels of maturity among consumers. You have some other stakeholders also who are more experts sometimes. So I should say that the marketing people need the CSR background, information, seriousness, but maybe the CSR people need the marketing expertise in terms of how do I make things understandable and maybe interesting. So, what did we share and what did we learn this afternoon? Well, actually, of course, transparency is necessary if we want to build or to rebuild trust, but it is not sufficient. If we have transparency, it's good, but we need additional leverages. One of them is credibility, and it comes from the consistency you have from the different aspects you cover, from the different areas of the companies. And also, you need to accept the fact that the consumer is evolving in its maturity in several CSR. So as a brand, you also have a responsibility not to only answer the expectation, but also to make the maturity of the consumer evolve with the time. And the brands which are really engaged from the beginning are, of course, pioneers in that trend, but also the companies and the brands who are in their own journey in CSR also have to engage their marketing teams in that transformation. We have a few minutes left, I think. Yes. So, in the room, any of you who would have a question, I will come to you. I will give you the mic. You are not allowed to take the mic from my hand. Okay, so you speak in my mic and I keep it. And then if you want to address your question more specifically to one of the speakers, don't hesitate to do so. Okay? Question, reactions? Yes? And of course, you can address your question to our friend.
I can speak loud enough.
I don't know, because since they record, you need to speak in the mic. Yeah.
So my question is for Rim. I saw in one of your slides that you said that if you are a consumer, you can ask to evaluate a brand. How do you expect it to be made very seriously from someone, and how are we supposed to do it? If I'm a customer and you propose to me, do you want to evaluate a brand? How will I do it, and how serious can it be?
Okay. Yes. So the features that we have on the app are giving both information, but also allowing a consumer to be committed. So there is a feature where when you are searching a brand that has not been evaluated, you can ask to the brand to be transparent. No consumer is evaluating the brand. It's only the number of demand. You will see that maybe you're not alone. And after 100 demand by month, we send it to the brand. So we will share it to the brand so that they know that people are asking for transparency.
There is an expectation from the market. Okay. Any other question or reaction? Yes?
I have a question on leadership and how the people who carry the brand can actually help in building this trust and being, consistent with the values of the brand and things. How do you see the impact of the person, of the founder or the CEO on building trust and?
So that's on top of the marketing people. Okay. What about the top management? So we move from brand to corporate approach, and so of course maybe Timothy, you can answer first that question. So how do you involve and maybe if you comment not only on your company, which had a very strong commitment from the beginning, but maybe some colleagues from some other companies, how do you see the importance of the leaders of the company's commitment in that area?
It depends. Sorry, that's not so easy to answer because in our case, it's a family company and the owner is the managing CEO. So he's extremely committed to sustainability. So that's clear that if he says we do it, then we do it. So that's a very simple messaging besides the culture. If you look into other companies, especially public companies, then there's a lot of process and formal process that you need to get decisions. So even if the CEO says we need to go in this direction, that doesn't really necessarily mean that it will happen. And there's many CEO commitments and they sound very strong, but at the end, the difficult part of it is transferring it and transforming it into their own organization. We had very many talks with CEOs of the biggest companies in the world, and they were all very committed. But if you talk to the working people, they say, oh, that's going to take a very long time. So again, it's not easy to not easy to compare us with a public company. But if you take a public company, then commitments are easy, but the doing is difficult.
Yeah, maybe before I give the mic to Rim, I could comment on that. I think that, of course, the commitment of the leaders and the top managers are important. We discussed yesterday in one of the conferences about their own background, their own maturity on sustainability, because most of the time they don't have that background at the present time. And the second part that I think is important is to allow their teams to play that game without being afraid. I have an example. I was working for ENJEUX some years ago, and I remember that people were talking about the brand as if it was a person. Oh, the brand wants to do that, and the brand wants to do that. And I always told them, the brand is not a person. It's a moral person, as we say in French. It's not a physical person. Interesting. One of the guy who really pushed one of their brand that was successful in sustainability changed job, and he took another brand. And suddenly the second brand, woo! You know, why? Because the human being who is behind the brand was mature and had understood. Okay, so we need to invest time and energy in training, but also allowing these people to actually turn their marketing job into what marketing should be, which is building the best answer to match your needs. Rim.
Yes. I think it's very interesting what you said, because I'm actually doing a meeting with all the brands that had contributed to the app. There is more than 100 brands, totally different, very let's say with a DNA, with transparency, but also brands that are mainstream, Adidas, like this. And what we see is that there is this is now, I think, employees that will accelerate the decision. So I think I totally agree, because the maybe leaders has to maybe just hear and maybe give more tools to employees. What I see is every time, I think maybe 80% of the time, people that are doing the first contact with us are like users of our app, and are the ones that will ask us questions to maybe try to convince their manager, their directors, and they do it. They are very proud then when they convince the manager. And I know also that, because we did also impact survey that will be launched, the results will be launched in September. I know also that once the brand has participated, employees are very CSR employees are very happy, because it gives public information that is really easy to see from everyone, and it will give also education, let's say, to the top management, and they will take it more seriously, more strategically, because it's really linked to the brand image.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe we should add actually a keyword to this list, because listening to the whole of us, I should add collaboration. I have an example within the Clarins group where we had a CSR department that was active for many years, okay? Suddenly we have two brands, Mugler and Azzaro, whose marketing team want to really find how they can turn sustainability into something that will be specific to their brand, that would be relevant, okay? And at some point, things are working, but not so easily, because they are separated. And suddenly we see the CEO of that part of Clarins, or the lady who was the top manager of all the fragrance part, okay? And she said something very interesting. She said, okay, you know what? I think you should work together, guys. Let's put the CSR people and the marketing people in the same room, and use Olivier and his team to help you find out what needs to be done. So collaboration, not only with external third party, but also inside the company, is very important. And when the CSR people and the marketing people work together, it's very efficient. The CSR manager of Clarins told me, I have dreamed for 10 years of the situation we have now. Because now, people from the marketing, they come in my office, they sit on my desk, and they say, Guillaume, it's not working fast enough. We need some results, because I want to talk about sustainability in my next launch of my new product. And he says, yeah, but you know, I have these part of the company who are facing difficulties. And so the marketing people will say, okay, we will talk to them. Then the marketing people talk to them, and suddenly everything goes faster. You know why? Because the marketing has a tremendous power within the company. Okay, so it's also very interesting to have the marketing community joined that transformation path that we are facing. I think we thank you for those who stayed until the end. I think we have reached the end of the conference. So thank you so much. Thank you for attending PRODURABLE also. And of course, if you want to have some one-by-one discussion with the speaker, you can meet them outside, and we will be happy to meet some of you on the Des Enjeux et des Hommes booth stand. Yeah, booth. Sorry, I'm tired. Thank you, sir. Okay, bye-bye. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Gaz, for your presence. Take care, and I hope to see you in real life soon.